Guys, just before we start, I just wanted to talk to people about having love and respect for the event that you are participating in. So Jesus and I have spent a lot of time planning this trip, organising venues, paying for venues, I've taken registrations from you guys. I've had waiting lists. I've had people, some of you guys, contacting me numerous times. Oh, please, I need to come. And all around the world that's been happening. People wanting special treatment or just my special case to give me a ticket where other people might be also wanting a ticket. And then we've had a lot of situations where a lot of people don't show up. Even sometimes those very same people who have sent me these emails saying, please, get me in. Or some of you leave early or just come for one day or, oh, it doesn't suit me or I've got a better thing I want to do later on today, so I'm just going to leave. And all of these things show that there's not much value placed on what we're doing here. And while that's absolutely up to you, by registering, you don't have to value God's truth in your life. You have free will. It's up to you how you want to spend your time. But when you've agreed to come to an event, and it's a 3-day event, and we ask everyone up front, please come for 3 days. And then what happens is you just come for part of the time, and some of you ask questions that have already been answered on the previous day, or you want to come up in the break and talk to us because you've got to leave early or because you weren't there at the previous day. All of that shows that there's not a lot of love for us, but also not a lot of love for others who want to be involved and participating here. And I wanted to raise it because we're here to learn about love, to teach you guys about love. And it's very evident that love is not the thing you're seeking. It's more this sort of pleasure, I suppose, or the comfort, or the
your demands, really.
You're just seeking demands with us, and yeah. I think
it's been a very common thing, and like last week, we booked a venue for 120 people, and 70 came. That's 50 people who didn't honour their agreement with us to come. And while these events are free, you've got to understand that we pay for the venue and we pay for all the other things to get there, only to find that we only needed to hire a venue half the size.
Yeah, so last weekend we would have fit in here, which is literally half the price that we paid last weekend per day. And it's quite, there's more trees.
Basically, a third of the price. So a lot of it demonstrates disrespect for our time and energy and effort, but also a lack of desire to learn truth, really, in a lot of ways, doesn't it? You've got an opportunity. This is the first opportunity you've had for what?
10 years.
10 years to spend some face-to-face time with us, and yet if you can't organise your life to be here well in advance, like it was 6 months ago or 4 months ago, can't organise your life to be here for 3 days of the week, of 1 week, like 6 months in advance, then I would suggest to you don't have a very strong desire to learn truth, right? So this is one of the things we're trying to do too, is to find people who are desirous of truth and who have a sincere desire for truth, not just who have what I would call a tire-kicking attitude about truth. Just come along when there's an opportunity, but don't bother when there's not. And don't bother with truth in your day-to-day life. So we're interested in finding people who want their relationship with God above everything else, and who want the truth above everything else as well. And obviously, what we're finding on this trip is that there's a large portion of people who are not like that at all, who are listening to divine truth, but who don't really have that level of or depth of desire for it. And in addition, those people are stopping other people who may have a desire from coming.
That's
the other problem.
Yeah, that's my challenge. I want these events to be open to everyone, and especially people who are really sincere, people who are really hungry for truth. People who want a relationship with God. And when I have a situation where there's a waiting list, and some of the people who want to come can't come, but then the people who just registered for a ticket but they're not really that interested only come for half of the time, then there's people who've missed out, and those people might be more interested than the people, well, they obviously are, than the people who come for half the time or come and then start to feel a bit uncomfortable and don't come back after lunch, you know, for the rest of the weekend. So
now we understand with a lot of our events that there is a lot of spirit pressure on you to not be here.
There's a huge
and many of you are already experiencing that this morning, and finding it difficult to concentrate and so forth. And that's the spirit addictions you're in with those spirits to not listen to material as a result. So we understand that's a problem, and we understand that it's difficult at times, but when people don't rock up at all after booking, then obviously they have no real intention, there's no real moral intention to honour an agreement that they are making with us by registering. And so, you know, we're not sure what to do about it because it's caused us so many troubles on this trip, to be honest. We're not sure what to do about it, but we feel that the best thing to do is just raise the issue, and this event's recorded, so hopefully the people who have attended events will listen to this and go, well, yes, in future, we'll make sure that if we register for an event that we're actually going to be there, and we're also going to be there for the entire time the event's on.
Yeah, and can I say, if you register within 24 hours of the, if you cancel within 24 hours of the event starting, then it's
very unloving, to be frank.
You know, no one else can take that place because they have to make arrangements to be there. So it's been very, very common on this trip for people to cancel 12 hours ahead, you know, of us starting, and that doesn't help anyone. You know, by then we've set out the chairs and we've done everything to make the space available for you. So if you cancel, and really if you loved yourself even, you'd have your life more organised than that, than, you know, a lot of people.
Or if you cared enough about the material,
yeah,
you'd have your life more organised than that,
yeah,
wouldn't you? Would you do that with a business trip or something like that? Probably not, right, for many of you. So you have to question the sincerity when that happens. Yeah.
Anyway, that was just a side note. It's also a little, well, it's also about what happens when you're at the events as well. When you,
many of you don't believe that what I'm presenting to you in the event applies to you, and so you want some personal assistance outside of the event. Everything I present to you applies to you. And if you applied it, you wouldn't need personal assistance outside the event. Does that make sense? So many of you don't see even the event itself as a gift.
Yeah, yeah. And probably the reason that I'm raising this now is that, like, we want to give every sincere person the opportunity to hear more of God's truth. It's the thing that has made us the happiest, has set us the most free in our lives. The two of us personally, we value it so much. So if anyone is sincere about it, you know, we want to engage with those people, and we know it's tough sometimes being in the world where you are, and there's a lot of opposition to it. So we have been talking about on Wednesday having like an informal gathering for people who are still in the area and maybe want to get together. So my intention coming back after lunch was to ask for a show of hands of who might like to come. But my preference, yeah.
Can you only put up your hand if you know for sure you would come?
Yes, that's what I would love to know. Thank you.
This will determine how big a space we need.
Yeah. Wednesday in, you know, 4 days. Yeah, this coming.
If you don't already have a space, I'd like to volunteer at my house, House of Bliss. It's in Del Cerro. It's a great energetic spot. It's a healing house. So.
Yeah, we're usually not interested in those kind of locations.
I didn't know if you had a spot.
The reason why is there's so many spirits in those locations generally that are much more disharmonious with God's truth than what you feel they are.
Yeah.
So generally,
they're usually invested in holding on.
They're invested in changing the course of the conversation generally.
Yeah. I just wanted to count off.
No, that's okay. I understand.
Appreciate it.
So
all right,
that's
did you count? Yeah.
3, I think it was.
23. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep you posted on how we go finding a spot for that.
Yeah, we've just got to find a quiet enough and large enough location.
Yeah.
We have one at our motel where we're staying, but it's all fully booked next week. So,
Yeah. And we can sit outside there, but it's under the
there's
quiet
jets
lights.
going over every 30 seconds. So that's not going to be very suitable for things like channeling or other things like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see what I can find.
Yeah. Good day.
Okay.
All right, well now what we're going to do is a little bit of channeling. We've just got some different groups of spirits who have an issue with what I said this morning, you could say. And so at this stage it's one group of spirits who are basically believers in the New Age concepts that exist on Earth today, and another group of spirits who are atheists. So we'll probably handle them in that order. We'll talk to them in that order. The New Age spirits first. And what we're thinking we'll do is we'll talk to them and then have a Q&A for a short period of time about the channeling and about the belief and how it relates. And then we might, after that, have a short break so you can go to the toilet and then come back, and then we'll do the same again for the second group of spirits. And by then it's probably going to be pretty close to 4 o'clock, I'd say. Probably well and truly. G'day, how are you?
Well, we've been observing.
Yeah, would you like to say who your name is?
I'm Ivana,
Yeah.
but I represent a group here. We consider ourselves to be quite a spiritual movement.
Yeah.
And
You see yourselves as being spiritually evolved?
certainly,
Yeah.
certainly. And we believe we've transcended a lot of the beliefs that you're talking about here today.
So what do you mean by transcended them?
Well, we understand that belief is not important. We understand that you think that it still is.
Right.
But we know that belief is merely a transient thing that occurs while people are on the earth. And the sooner people can be freed of belief, the more meaningful their life will become. The more bliss, you said bliss, the more bliss they will experience.
Mm-hmm. And you believe yourselves to experience bliss?
Yes.
And how long have you been in the spirit world?
We are we're from ancient times.
Yeah. Can you be more specific?
Well, it varies. It varies amongst us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Anywhere from 3,000, 4,000 years ago
Mm-hmm.
to 1,500 years.
Yeah. So been in the spirit world a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's been the net result of you feeling that beliefs are unimportant? Do you know the location you live in now?
Oh, we are very evolved.
Yeah. What is the location?
Well, we transcended. We don't know how to answer that question.
Well, perhaps what I'd like to do is bring some spirits to you who can answer that question.
What we notice is that you speak a lot in limitation. You speak a lot in levels. You speak a lot in definites.
Mm-hmm.
But these things are not necessary.
I know that's what you believe.
Yes.
Let's ask the spirits who know your location to come and tell us what your location is.
Well, they say it's a little varied.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some of us have come together just here today.
Mm-hmm.
I might.
Can you see those spirits have a very good condition, don't they? The ones who have come to you.
Yes.
They're very loving.
Yes.
And can you see they're also very happy, aren't they?
Yes.
Good. And can you also see they obviously know more than you do? This is one reason why you automatically felt a bit more humble when they came. It's because you can feel that they do know more than you do.
Yes.
Okay, and where are they saying? They are saying there are spheres in the spirit world, aren't they? Locations.
Yes.
Yes. And
Yes, we don't really understand why they're saying that, because that, to us, is a limitation.
correct. Yeah. And where do they say you are limited to?
Well, I myself, they're saying the number 4.
Yes.
Some others, the number 1.
Yes.
But again, we're not very comfortable with this.
Yeah, no, I understand why you would not be. Many of you have believed that getting rid of your beliefs has freed you from the burden of beliefs, don't you?
Yes, and we see everything that you speak of as really, it's really infantile. It's in the infancy of existence.
Yes.
When one is bothered by emotion, bothered by belief, is bothered by these sort of really base principles is what you're discussing.
Well, you believe them to be base is probably a better way of saying it.
Yes, yes.
Because I don't believe they are. And also, if you ask the spirits that have come to you to talk to you about your location, you can see they don't believe they're base either.
No, which is a little...
Interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you've sort of thought that by getting rid of beliefs, that it's made your progress, and in some cases, many of your beliefs had been limiting before, and therefore had limited your progress, and that's why when you got rid of those beliefs, let's call them false beliefs, when you got rid of false beliefs, it made your life better and easier and happier.
Yes, but we didn't use the process that you have been explaining.
I know that. But these spirits who have come to you now, ask them whether they have beliefs. Yes, they do. Yes. And have those beliefs, ask them whether those beliefs have limited their progress or not.
No.
Can you see any belief that is false certainly would have limited their progress, just like any belief that you got rid of that was false limited yours. But in the process of believing that if you get rid of all beliefs that you end up in the best location, you've actually neglected to believe that there might be true beliefs that are supportive of the new location that you don't have. So in other words, that there's false beliefs and there's true beliefs. What you've thought at the moment was that there's just false beliefs that you get rid of, and you've lumped them all together and called them just beliefs that you get rid of, rather than thinking actually that there are false beliefs that are important to get rid of, and then there's true beliefs that are important to acknowledge and also accept in order to grow further. So if you ask them where the sphere is that they exist in, these spirits that have come to you,
they're saying 7 and 8.
yeah.
But this, we don't feel very... This implies...
Can you feel now that you're starting to get a bit concerned about what it implies?
Well, we feel very opposed to the idea of assigning levels to people. We feel that this is very wrong.
Well, we're not assigning levels to people. The law assigns the location of the person. So you know the persons that are in the first sphere that you mentioned, sphere number 1, and the sphere that you're in, sphere number 4, these spheres have different levels of love that belong to each level. And that's why some of you are in sphere 1 and some of you are in spheres 4.
But what is love but just a belief?
Well, love is actually a real feeling. It's not just a belief.
See, we feel that we have come to understand that feelings are not necessary.
I know you have. Let's ask the spirits who have come to you whether they feel they're necessary. Can you hear their explanation as to why they feel they're necessary?
We actually feel quite angry now. Angry at you, angry at them, angry. No.
Yeah. Now I understand the anger, because the anger is always there because there is a belief inside of yourself that's getting challenged. So you remember when you were growing in the past, every time you got angry, the persons that have helped you grow or change have helped you see that the anger is something you need to let go of over time, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
and this feels like a regression. This is what we're saying. This is why what you are teaching is very bad. It's pulling us back to the earth now. It's pulling us back to limitation. It's pulling us back to...
Well, it's pulling you back to some of the beliefs that you didn't know you continued to have, actually.
But the anger is a step backwards.
Yeah, but if you look at the purpose for your purpose for anger is to get overcome or get control of the feelings you have. So you were saying earlier that your feelings weren't important, but now you're experiencing a feeling, anger, which is there to try to overcome other feelings. Remember,
and the problem is the feelings.
No, the problem is the beliefs attached with the feelings.
Can you not see that if you give up feelings and beliefs, you don't have these problems?
I mean, that only applies if they're false beliefs. See, if they're
we don't agree.
But the spirits are in higher locations and you do agree. So...
the question, then there's a simplicity in not having feelings and beliefs.
Well,
a simplicity, there's a beauty, there's a calmness.
Well, it's a false peace, though. It's a peace achieved through denial rather than a peace achieved through the acceptance of truth. So it's false. If you think about the spirits who have come to you, they have already explained to you there's truths that you're not able to accept in your current state, which they have accepted.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, but it's very perplexing.
Yes.
Another feeling now I'm having that I'm not happy about.
Yes, yes.
But it's perplexing that this is... Yes, they're saying there's beliefs that could help us to attain more happiness.
Correct.
Or more peace.
And more
which is really...
bliss, more bliss.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what we seek to attain.
Correct.
Peace and bliss.
Yes.
And the shared humanity.
Can you see they're saying to you that you're going to have to accept some true beliefs in order to attain that?
Yes.
Yep.
But what is difficult now
Yep.
is that when you start to talk to us about that,
Yep.
is that we're not going towards more bliss, we feel angry.
Yes, because that's because of the false beliefs emotionally are still inside of you. And unless you let yourself process through them emotionally, they will remain inside of you. Even if you create this intellectual fiction that you're beyond it, they are still there. And this conversation is illustrated, they are still there.
Yes, they're there, but
Yeah.
at least we weren't experiencing the pain. We weren't drawn back to the earth and we weren't experiencing the pain of them
Yes.
before we started to
But
be
you also
here.
weren't progressing.
No. But surely it would be better if all of humankind could at least reach the point where we are, and then there would be peace.
Well, where you are, but what about the ones in the first sphere? Because they're obviously in a different condition than where you are.
But they will attain this condition if they keep listening to what we are saying.
Listening to what you teach them.
Yes.
Yep.
Just like there's many people on earth that we are teaching this to.
I understand, but what you're doing is you're not teaching true beliefs, which could allow people to get even into a higher condition.
But surely...
A stronger condition of happiness and bliss.
Yes, but surely we could at least have everyone reach this condition before we take on the new beliefs. And also, if we're to take on the new beliefs, why does it involve having these
emotions?
Yes.
Well, that's because a lot of the reasons why you've stagnated in your progress to where you are is because there's certain emotions that you've been covering over that without going through those emotions, you're not going to progress any further.
And I suppose the issue that I have now is, I understand now what you're saying.
Yep.
But the issue that I have is when I weigh the potentials against the calm that I feel where I am now, and I weigh that against the option of I'm being drawn back to the earth as we talk about this changing of beliefs, taking on true beliefs. And the pain of doing that, I don't know if it's worth the
bliss of what's above.
Yes, it does. I don't have any feeling that going back to the earth will take me into a bliss above where I am. I've worked very hard to get where I am.
Yeah, I understand that. And what are those spirits with you, though, saying to you about this process?
Yes, they're saying that what you're saying is correct. But I don't
believe it. And this is an example of a belief that's held on to emotionally that stops you from moving forward.
So, I mean, the other feeling I have now is fear.
Yep, I understand that. You see, a lot of the way you've progressed till now is about calming yourself down, getting anything that's distressed you in any way up until this point, you've sort of dismissed and reframed it intellectually so you don't have to think about it or feel about it anymore.
Well, there's many methods that we have.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm just describing one of them, right?
Yeah.
You want to describe some of the others?
Yeah, well, there's certain techniques of with breath and energy that we have learned.
So you breathe into a state of calmness?
Yes.
Yes.
And sort of move blockages in the system through breath.
You mean blockages in your spirit body?
Yes.
Yes. Through breathing into those areas of your body?
Yes, and just creating movement, creating energy flow.
Yeah.
There's also collectively as a group, sort of having similar states, teaching kind of meditative states.
Yeah, meditation.
And engaging with them in a group sense as well.
Yeah.
And so sort of circulating energy between all
members
of us.
Of the group?
Yes.
Yes.
There's also seeking to understand. And understanding that any pain is not a part of us. It's an illusory part of us.
So in other words, you sort of believe pain is not real?
That's
just
right.
Something that
it's
is
just
an
a
illusion.
belief that we're holding on to.
Yeah, good.
All of these things have been very effective for me. It's taken time, but
many thousands of years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, many thousands of years. Yeah.
But I hope you can understand that having discovered such contentment after such trouble, it inspired me to want to be able to teach that to people on the earth.
I do understand that, but if you continue to teach something that's limiting, then of course the people you teach will also be limited.
I guess the challenge for me is seeing it as a limit. I do understand what you're saying, but it feels of freedom.
Let's take you to the gate of the fourth sphere. Should we do that? Yep. So the fourth sphere, there's a gate between the fourth sphere and the fifth sphere. It's a transition that you've been through a number of times before in the lower spheres. Now, now that you're facing the gate, how do you feel about crossing it?
Yeah, aversion. I feel aversion.
Yeah. Can you remember that feeling from the past when you wanted to get from, say, the first sphere to the second sphere? Yeah. Will have a spirit just remind you of the process you went through there?
No, I remember.
Yeah, you remember. And you remember the same version existed. Can you remember that?
Yes.
Even though the second sphere was a better place.
Yes.
So some of these beliefs are causing a lack of faith in you that the next sphere will be a better place than the current place you're in. You see that?
Well, I do acknowledge that the next sphere must be a better place. But what concerns me is that when we talk, I feel more drawn downwards than up.
And there's good reason for that. Would you like to know what they are?
Yes.
Because at the moment you've been very afraid of that.
Yes.
And that causes you to not sort of even want to know why that might be happening.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly.
So it's far better if we can sort of discuss with you why that's happening so that you gather some understanding. Yeah? Okay. So, of course, our spirit friends are already explaining to you, aren't they? So there's probably little, aside from for the audience here, that I need to say. But if you think about, as you go back, anything that is missed out in a previous sphere to deal with, you basically will need to go back so that you engage that teaching in a proper manner in order to move forward again. Because things get missed out on purpose. We make choices in our mind and we make choices in our feelings to not deal with certain things. And then we choose to progress using certain methods that help us to avoid those feelings. And yet those feelings remain within us. So one of the feelings you still have within you is a lack of faith about future progress, even. And that feeling needs to be addressed and released so that it stops limiting your current progress. And the only way it's going to be addressed is by you going to the sphere where it's taught and where you can feel your way through addressing it.
It doesn't, I need to reflect, because I can see that my issue is that I now feel that there's no justice in what has happened.
Right.
Because I have achieved some level of contentment after many, many years.
Yeah.
And now, when I consider the way that you and these friends here are explaining,
yeah,
it will involve me returning
and making
to the
an
earth
adjustment,
life.
Yeah.
Not an adjustment. And
Well,
I feel quite offended. It's
well,
not an
It's
adjustment.
a major
It is
thing,
the re-experience of trauma. And I thought I had transcended that. And so...
Yeah, but you wanted to transcend it in order to not face it.
But where is the justice in me here, having been able to attain this, only to find that this is wasted because I need to go back to the beginning?
Well, the trouble with following any path that leads to nowhere is that at some point you're going to have to go back on that path and take another path to somewhere.
So why wasn't I told? Why did I take this path?
Because you wanted to take it and you didn't want to be told. If you think about even the start of this conversation, you wanted to tell me how wrong I was, and this is how it would have been if somebody had come along before now to explain this path to you. You would have just sat down with them and told them how wrong they were. Does that make sense? And you know you would have done such a thing, right?
Yes.
So I'm not pointing it out to make you feel bad. I'm just saying that if you think about and actually there has been opportunities.
And I have done that.
Yes, where people have come to you, have tried to explain to you that there was a different path, and each time, because of the emotions that were getting triggered inside of you, unbeknownst to yourself, you then wanted to explain to them that your path was right and theirs was wrong. And eventually, can you see in every conversation it got to the point where they just sort of had to give up because that you were so steadfast in your idea or concept that you were right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I understand the feelings you're going through and they're valid, but I also can see that if we look honestly at the circumstances of your past life, you can also see there were many opportunities to change the method of progress, but it was pretty hard at the time for you to consider such changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, I feel.
Key is not to be so harsh on yourself about it. There's obviously feelings from the past that you didn't want to address, and there was a very strong developed intellect eventually that developed over time that said, I shouldn't have to address them, I shouldn't have to address them, and so that then caused you to want to engage a method of progress that was limited in its future, but which felt like progress now. You know, felt like progress in the immediate time, but it was limited in the long term in terms of the progress that could be engaged.
I guess the only thing is to thank you, and I feel quite sheepish now, and I feel like you have helped a lot. And
can I make a few recommendations before you go?
Yeah.
Is that all right? The spirits who I invited to come to see you at the beginning, they've been through this process. They've had the same disappointments as yourself. Can you see that they're telling you a bit about their history now? And you can see that they had a time where they were progressing, they thought they were progressing, and then they sort of hit this roadblock in their progress and thought that was the limit of their progress, or what they called the limit of their bliss.
Yeah.
And then they had other people come to explain to them that wasn't the case, and for many, many years they also chose to completely ignore the advice of others and so forth, until such a time as they become discontented with their current circumstances.
Yes, I think the challenge has been that I didn't feel myself to be discontented.
Correct. You felt interested enough though. Can you see the main reason why you wanted to attend some of my seminars is because you felt there was a level that you wanted to argue with what I was teaching. But isn't that interesting in itself? Because even the desire to argue with somebody can lead you to potential future growth, right?
Yeah, I hope I don't live to regret it.
Oh, I don't see why you would. Like, all that can be good for you here is that you see that as these spirits are explaining to you, this roadblock was always in your future with the method you were choosing. Does that make sense? So it was always there. You were going to progress to a certain point, and you're basically going to hit a point where it stops and progress would stop. And then at some point in the future, you would have had to get to, like they had to a state of discontent before they were letting somebody talk to them about further progress. At least now, that time might have been hundreds of years in the future for yourself. Now it's like the fact that you were here and wanting to have a discussion is great, because it says, right, before the discontent arose, let's have the argument with the person who's teaching the wrong thing, and let's see if we can convince them about what we believe is right. But in that process, it's created an opening where the discontent begins earlier. And if the discontent begins earlier, then there's earlier progress.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's opportunities being created that would not otherwise be created. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And this is one reason why Mary and I love to talk with spirits who even disagree with us. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel possibly I'll owe you an apology.
Well,
in time to come.
I'm not too worried about apologies, and I'm more concerned about false teachings on earth, as we've been talking to the group here. False teachings on earth get imbibed on earth, and frequently then, and also in the spirit world, as you know, because you've imbibed some of these beliefs even in the spirit world, right? And then eventually false beliefs lead to a blockage in progress where you can't progress beyond them anymore. And this is something that I'm trying to share with people on earth.
So is anything that I have done with others been of benefit then on the earth or here in the spirit world, training people in these techniques as I've been doing? Has any of that helped anyone?
Well, this is something you'll need to resolve, won't it be, within yourself as to whether it has been. Now, I think in the future you will find there are certain things that you've tried to help people with have had some limited benefit with them, but of course limited to the point where eventually they would have come to a limit with that method of progress anyway.
And it sort of feels to me now that this didn't benefit me, because if I have to go back to the beginning again, it's not helped me at all.
It will benefit you. See, if you imagine yourself back at the beginning. So when did you pass? You remember the time when you passed? How many?
3,000 years ago?
Yep. So 3,000 years ago when you passed, can you remember the conditions you were in?
It was bad.
Yeah. Could you imagine yourself then talking to me then? Talking about these things then, in the state you were in when you passed?
Probably not.
Yeah. Can you see the time that's happened between then and now that has changed you to a degree to become more open to these kind of discussions?
Well, only in that I won't attack you.
Yeah. Well, that at least is a good thing, because any spirit getting attacked, you won't spend much time with you, right? You learned that pretty early in your life as a spirit.
Well, no, but I didn't learn to control my rage for a very
long time. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, so there's that. And then also, as these spirits will explain to you, that from 2,000 years ago onwards, an alternative method of progress wasn't really available. And so you're living in the time now when it is available, and you can engage this alternate method of progress, but which is ever infinite in its future, not just limited. But at the time of your life, when you passed, when you did pass 3,000 years ago, that was not available. And there's reasons for that, which they can explain to you. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of circumstances, is what I'm pointing out to you, that would cause a person to not be able to accept some truths, some of which are what God's offering, but also some of which are our state, our personal state has to change a bit before we're willing to see things that we couldn't see before. Mm. And as you can see, as time's gone on over those 3,000 years, the desire for peace in you has also created a degree of arrogance in you towards accepting other beliefs that might help you progress further.
Yes, and that's what I'm worried about now with other people. Am I creating that? I must be, and this, I must be.
Yeah, and this is a part of the problem with teaching beliefs that are not true. Part of the problem is that we end up influencing other people to do the things that are not true, which also ends up with a detriment with their own life. Yeah. And I know that you fully believed what you were teaching was true, but that doesn't change the fact that if we do teach things that are false, even though we believe them to be true, there is still a detrimental effect on somebody else's life, as well as our own, of course. And one reason why you haven't been able to progress beyond the fourth sphere is partially because of what you've been teaching. Not just because of your beliefs, but also the fact that there's penalties associated with teaching wrong beliefs, and that has limited your progress to the fourth sphere.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
I didn't know that.
These are things that our spirit friends that have come to you can help you understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries about that. It's good to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure.
How's everyone else going on in the group? There's various levels of difficulty, isn't there?
Yes.
Obviously, those in the first sphere are having more difficulty
Yes.
than those of you who are in the higher spheres, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if any of them would like to, if you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think the other people here who've come are going to sort of, they're saying to stay after.
Yeah.
So that
That'd be advisable.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of the people have been in your group?
Well, in my everyday group or
Yeah.
in my regular group,
Yeah.
there's 50,000 of us probably.
Mhm.
that we had the same mission.
And you had a very organised stance on trying to help people on earth follow the same teachings as yourself.
Yes, there's a lot we've been doing on earth, and it's going to need a lot of
sort of adjustment.
Well, yes, and we need to understand a lot more. But it feels a little bit like, do we just abandon those people now?
Well,
should we just step away from them because we don't know what we're doing?
Well, I don't know if that would be loving, because if you think about it, if you've led a person down a path, the wise thing to do would be lead them back to a different path, wouldn't it? Like
even in our confusion now, or we're not understanding, we're just...
Well, the people on earth you've been trying to assist would be far better off in a state of confusion than they would be in a state of definite going down the wrong path.
Oh, yes, yes.
And then if you, as you learn, as you know, you've got a capacity to learn a lot faster than people on earth generally have a capacity to learn, because they're limited by their, desires and addictions and so forth, whereas you're less so. So that gives you a stronger capacity to learn faster. So as you learn things, you can, as a way of helping them back along the path, to get to another path, you can assist them to make those changes, lead them to those changes, you see.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
so
we can do that.
It's not harmful having a connection with people on earth, as long as you lead them to the truth rather than lead them to what you believe is true. And there's a difference between what you believe is true and what is actually the truth.
There's a lot for us to understand here.
Yeah. So my suggestion is learn as much as you can, and as you learn, our spirit friends that are helping you learn, they will also make suggestions to you about what you could potentially do to undo the pressures that you've put on earth to follow the same path. That makes sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Savannah.
Bye.
Have a good meeting. All right. Any questions you'd like to ask Theo? If we microphone with Theo.
I talk to many New Agers, and I find myself wanting to say, hey, God's not energy, God's real, God's a being you can relate with. And they're like, oh no, that's not true.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm like, oh. And I get really triggered by that, and I'm like, I know I have my own problems with God, and as you've been raising, I got my own anger to God that kind of preclude what I think I know about God. And I don't know, is it better to just go off and feel my own stuff than to pretend to, teach someone something?
It's never it's never a bad thing to attempt to share with a person who's in a conversation with you what you believe the truth to be, as long as you're fairly certain what that truth is. If, and unfortunately, as we saw there with Ivana, the trouble is, in your own arrogant state, you can be very convinced of what the truth is, and often be very wrong. So the very first thing we need to learn to do is to first make sure that from God's perspective, what we want to share with a person is accurate, right? And also that we honour their will. Now, in her case, you could see there were many spirits who came to her when she wanted assistance. They came to her and made suggestions in her past. They made suggestions to her about how she could progress a different way. But because of her own emotional beliefs and blockages, she felt that what they were suggesting was obviously incorrect. In her mind, it was incorrect. And that caused her to not listen. But when I had the conversation with her, I could refer to those events, reminding her that those events occurred. So even the fact that those spirits came to her at some point in the past and tried to help her at some point in the past, even though there was no seeming effectiveness in that process for her, in this conversation, referring her to that was quite effective. Does that make sense? So, but the key thing is, does the person want to have a conversation? So in Ivana's case, she came to us because she wanted to argue with me, basically. And many people do that with me all the time, of course. We get heaps of emails where people want to argue with me about everything we're teaching. We get lots of people face-to-face wanting to argue with us about everything we're teaching. And I don't mind people coming to me who want to argue, because at the end of the day, it gives me an opportunity to share the truth that might not otherwise be able to be shared. The difference is if they come with with the desire to argue, but also the desire to attack or belittle or pull down. Now, she didn't have that. As she said, 3,000 years ago, she would have been angry with me. But she worked through a lot of her rage and so forth. And so in the conversation, even though she was quite, her inner peace in that conversation was utterly destroyed. But even though that was the case, she still was able to talk with me in a civil manner, right? Without being in a rage and yelling at me and trying to pull me down and all those other things. So that was good. That means she'd already made some progress in love to get to that stage where she could disagree with somebody but not have to dump on the person a lot of her anger and rage. So every situation where you're facing a person who doesn't believe what you believe, you've first got to question whether what you believe is true in any way. And then the second thing you need to do is make sure that you're connected to God while you're sharing truth with others. Because if you disconnect from God while you're sharing truth with others, you are now highly likely going to be influenced away from sharing truth and rather be sharing personal information with others. So under those circumstances, it'd be best to retire from the conversation and go through your own experience and your own feelings. Then there are times when you've done that and you've gotten beyond those feelings and you've dealt with all those sort of feelings that you feel, and you just have a loving interest in the person. And under those circumstances, you'll find you'll get inspired to help them in ways that eventually may assist them. It may not assist them when you talk to them, but it may assist them in the future, right? So, and the key is to not be disappointed that you haven't helped them right now either, right? Many people have an attachment of their own worth to somebody else believing what they believe. So in other words, if I try to convince you, Theo, to believe what I believe because I feel my worth is improved if you believe what I believe, then my motive for teaching you something is very impure, it's very selfish. But if I'm just interested in Theo and I just love Theo and I just would like him to understand some truths if he wants to know them, and Theo gives me an opportunity to share those truths with him one way or the other, until such a time as you no longer give me that opportunity, I want to share them with you. That makes sense? If I love you, and if I've got the time and the energy within myself to do such a thing, I would. But if I have a need to convince you and I start getting angry and upset with you for not accepting what I'm saying, now I'm completely out of line. Now I need to retire and deal with my feelings rather than trying to convince you that I'm right. Because ultimately it doesn't matter whether I'm right. What matters is what's God's truth. That's what matters. Not whether I'm right or you're right, but both of us, if we have the desire, we want to find out what God's truth is. Now, there are certain people, as I pointed out to Ivana, there's certain people who will know more of that truth than you will, because they've had the opportunity to discover that truth earlier, or in a different way than you have. And so they will know the truth better than you. The key is to be able to recognise those persons. When they came to Ivana, she could instantly see that she automatically had a more humble feeling. And now, many of you might not have felt it, but I could feel it the instant they come. Her feeling was more, maybe I've got something to listen about here. Because she didn't expect anybody who was in a brighter condition, a happier condition than herself, to have a completely separate belief system than herself. She didn't expect that. And so that caused her to pause and go, oh, what's going on here? You know, something's going on here now that I didn't expect. Now, she's been following us for a number of weeks, Ivana, in terms of listening to us, and her group as well, because they were concerned that what we're teaching is against what they're teaching, and they want me to stop me from teaching it. Right? That was their purpose for following me around. And many of them, while we've been in the USA actually, have been getting involved with the audience, saying, what he's saying there is not true, what you think is right, and what he's saying is wrong, and all that. And this has been going on for some time, right? Now, we're aware that it's going on, but most of our audiences are not aware. And being aware means that you can then give an opportunity, which is what we wanted to do, to make these adjustments, like to try to help the persons. The more we can help the spirits who are influencing you, the more that spirit pressure relieves, and the more you're able to have your own thoughts and your own feelings and your own opinions. When you've got this heavy spirit pressure around you saying this is what you should believe and this is what you should think, and it's very much in harmony with what you're trying to avoid internally, it makes it much more difficult for you to hear the truth. When you actually hear it, you don't actually hear it with your heart. You know, it's just like in one ear and out the other, as the saying goes. So having the conversation with people is a very important thing, but if it's done in an unloving manner, it's going to have actually cause more distress and pain than if you didn't have it at all. And not only more distress and pain for the other person, but also for you. Yeah. And that's just something to bear in mind when you're sharing truth with others. Make sense there? Yeah. You got any more questions about that, or you're up? Okay, let's come over here and there. Yeah. So here. Yeah.
To go off of beliefs, I grew up neo-pagan Wiccan, and so the God is nature was very heavy.
Very prominent.
Yes, in my life.
Yep.
I feel like I'm very sincere. Like I want to know a lot of truth. I have a really hard time with self-doubt, and I know it was taught to me by my parents.
Yep.
I wanted to ask, how do you guys, or do you guys feel through your self-doubt and then naturally you're more open to the truth, or how should I approach that?
What you call self-doubt, how would you describe it as a feeling?
A sinking feeling. I feel like I listen to you guys and I'm like, oh, that feels so good. And then I get clouded with self-judgment.
So what kind of judgments?
I'm wrong and I don't know anything. Or other people know more than me.
Okay, so let's...
And the reason Jesus is doing this is because doubt is a funny thing. Doubt is not a real emotion, actually.
Yeah. Let's just write down a few things you actually feel. There's other things you feel too in this self-doubt. Can you... just really close with that mic because you've got that mouse.
For self-doubt, I also feel...
What does self-doubt also gives you something? So here you're saying it's taking something away from you, but it also gives you something as well. What does it give you?
I'm not sure.
There's a few things it gives you.
What do you do after you start?
Let's say I'm in a disagreement with Mary.
Okay.
And Mary says she's right, and I'm going, and she's quite strong about it, like she's quite firm about it, that she's right. And I'm going, well, I'd like to be able to doubt myself. For what reasons? Why would I like to doubt myself?
I am a people pleaser, so
Okay.
I give in to others.
So you avoid, what do you get to avoid?
I get to avoid my pain.
Yeah, just conflict. You
Conflict.
get to avoid
Yeah.
potential conflict, don't you?
Yes.
So you avoid conflict with others by doubting yourself, yes? So there's a motive for doubting yourself, which is to avoid conflict with others, yeah. There's also a motive to avoid conflict with yourself. So let's say if believing something would say, I have to act. So this is what was happening with Rana just earlier. She was starting to look at her beliefs and going, but if I believe that's true, then, there's also all these other things I'm now going to have to do that I don't really want to do. One of them was that she would have to go back to a sphere lower than where she was in to learn some things, and she didn't like that idea. Another one was that she was feeling some anger and other feelings that she didn't want to have to feel. And another one was that she started realising she would have to unteach some of what she thought were truths, which were not true. She would have to unteach it. And she wasn't too happy with that idea either. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So sometimes self-doubt causes us to avoid internal conflict.
And action. We don't have to act if we're still doubtful.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very
Alright.
much so.
So, self-judgment is actually an addiction.
Self-doubt is an addiction.
Self-doubt is an addiction too. Yeah. Now, if you go, there's a difference between self-doubt and understanding or being humble that you don't know much, isn't there? So, to my feeling is, compared with God knows, God's infinite, compared to what God knows, I know hardly anything at all. I just happen to know more than many of you. No, mostly because I've lived for 2,000 years and you haven't. Right? That's a big reason why. Another reason why, this lady had lived for 3,000 years and I still knew more than she knew, but that was because of some experiences that I've had that she hasn't had. So I'm humble to that idea that, well, I would like to encourage her to have those experiences. I'm not a better person than she, I'm not more important than she is, I'm not worth more than she is. I've just had different experiences than she's had, and also I've had a much more humble attitude than she has had, which has allowed me to learn more truth. And that's what I'm encouraging her to do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you can sort of get to the stage where you go, what I believe doesn't matter at all. My feelings don't matter, what I believe doesn't matter in the sense of what I believe is true, doesn't really matter. What matters is what God knows is true. That's what matters. Right? And if I've got to deal with a whole heap of emotional things in order to accept what God knows is true, I'm prepared to do it. Right? But the average person isn't. The average person wants to avoid conflict or wants to avoid eternal conflict or wants to avoid action. And so what we end up doing is we end up creating some things that we call self-doubt, self-judgment, that are really all much more to do with the fact that we don't want to be attacked and we don't want to feel about it.
Yeah, and often we conflate these things. We say, oh, my self-doubt, my self-judgment, that's me being humble. It's actually a state of arrogance.
Okay, yes, yes.
An emotional state of arrogance.
Saying, I don't want to feel all the emotions I have associated with this, so I'm going to live in self-doubt and judgment. And if you think about what Jesus was talking about before when he's saying about respecting the fact or acknowledging the fact that you don't know everything, God knows everything, that if you feel the difference in that state, that opens you up to curiosity and seeking.
Yeah, I like that state.
But this state that we often call humble, actually shuts us off from more seeking, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Thank you, because that explains so much. I feel arrogance when I judge myself, and I never understood why.
Why? Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because when you're like a child investigating, there's very little like doubting, like not knowing whether something is true or not doesn't lead to self-doubt and doesn't lead to self-criticism and doesn't lead to self-judgment. You just go, I don't know. There's many times when you ask me a question, I go, I don't know. I'm okay with not knowing. I'm in the process of discovering new things. I suggest you are too. And what we've often done though is we've attached what we know to our worth as well. So for many of us, we think we want to think we know things because it makes us feel worthy. you got to forget all that, because that's all just, again, another way of being not humble, not limiting, through your humility, limiting what you're capable of looking for. You know, a person who seeks truth looks everywhere for it. Yep. A person who doesn't want truth because of certain emotional conflicts, either internally or externally, doesn't want the truth, then you're going to create certain belief systems inside of yourself that you then live by. And these are belief systems of the soul, of your own soul, that you've imbibed. So self-doubt is a belief system, self-criticism, self-judgment, belief systems that you imbibe that you don't need to have, but you feel you need to have in order to do these things, in order to avoid conflict with others, avoid internal conflict, and avoid taking action, and avoid the thought that you're right or wrong. You know, like most people either want to feel that they are right or, you know, and are very unhappy to think they're wrong about something. I think it's just as good being wrong as it is right. And the reason why I feel that way is because when I'm wrong, I then know I'm wrong and I give up on that idea. The trouble with thinking you're right all the time is all the things you're wrong about, you won't give up. You'll keep them. And that's a waste of time, right? You want to find out what's wrong as fast as possible and find out what's right as fast as possible.
Thank you, yes.
That's the best way to progress, right? Yeah. So yes, self-doubt is a problem that people do face, but it's driven by addictions, usually to avoid conflict within themselves or others.
And as I'm sure you found, you can't process doubt. It's a kind of an avoidance of emotion. Doubt is an avoidance of
It's a
fear.
preferred
It's an
state.
avoidance.
It's an addiction.
Yeah.
So you prefer that than you would that.
And it does make sense. I have just a little smidge of my emotions towards, I think I'm being nice if I avoid conflict with my parents,
Yeah.
because I want to please them.
Yep.
And I've noticed, I as soon as I scratch the surface with, I no longer feel like I want to avoid conflict just a little bit more than usual.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think, well, is that true? Is that true?
You go into this doubt place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this makes
And
sense.
there's an excuse. It's sort of like saying, if I can doubt myself, then I won't have the conflict.
Right. Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes.
But see, there are times when you know a lot and you completely avoid the fact that you know it. And the reason why you avoid the fact you know it is because if you have to raise it, the people around you will be upset with you, and so you'd rather not know it. Right?
Yeah.
So you'd rather act like you don't know it, or put yourself into this state where you're going, I don't know. And then, of course, spirits around you, family spirits and other spirits get into as well, and they go, how dare you think that way? You shouldn't think that way. How bad is it that you think that way? You're just picking. You're not seeing how bad you are now. You're not being humble now yourself. You know, and they go into these states with you, and you get all this influence and all the internal conflict that's going on inside of yourself emotionally. Then the best course of action is what I'd call a moral compromise, which is actually bad for you morally, but what you do is you avoid the truth because it gets you the truth. You think the truth's going to get you into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So it's best to avoid it. Now, this is really what Ivana was feeling too, wasn't it? She felt that accepting some truths would get her into more trouble. Right? Not a true thing. It's not, but she had faith that it would get her into more trouble. So there's a corrupt faith that she had about that. And a lot of what I discussed with her had to be discussed because I was trying to help her build a little bit of faith that it wouldn't get her into so much trouble as she thought it would. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just so that she could be a bit more open to the discussion. So when I said things to her like, these spirits who have come to you, are they in a happier place or a sadder place? You know, she could see they are happier. When I said, well, can you see they've had to imbibe beliefs? And she could see, yes, they've had to get beliefs. So giving up beliefs is good if they're false, but giving up all beliefs is not good. Because what if you're giving up truth? That's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Do you know what I mean? And many of us do that. Many of us believe, and there are many philosophical, spiritual paths on earth that believe that you just give up everything. Yeah. None of which, of course, are good because they all create limitations in our future. But unfortunately, many of us would prefer to do that and do this than we would to accept truth. Yeah.
So Ivana was acting as a spokesperson for many spirits.
She was.
And I'm really curious what's happening with all the other spirits.
Yes,
are you aware of the epiphanies they may be having also? Or
yeah, and they're being helped by a group of spirits who have been through their process. So, but because of the different conditions they were in, so see, when Ivana and her group came to Earth, what she basically did every time she came from the fourth sphere to Earth, she's also bringing all the third sphere, the second sphere, the first sphere spirits who she's been teaching to Earth with her, who have the same beliefs. Now, the first sphere and second sphere spirits, but particularly the first sphere spirits, still have quite a lot of anger in them and quite a lot of resistance to their emotions in them and quite a lot of difficulty facing some fundamental feelings that they have. And so it's harder for them to come to terms with what I said to Ivana that it is for Ivana to.
So, one of their common attractions, I can feel, is that they believe emotion is weakness. And so that's why spirits are attracted, you know, that's why they're attracted to what Ivana was teaching.
Yeah.
And obviously some of them feel very sort of betrayed now by her as well. They feel like they've been
Misled by
her, which was part of what she was starting to worry about as well.
Yeah.
And then some of them feel like it's the only way that they were getting kind of comfort from their feelings was to have this group, and they've been coming to Earth to kind of attend, I guess it seems like, meditation
New
groups
Age meditation
and
circles,
those kinds of things.
that kind of thing.
And so some of the first sphere spirits were feeling very attached to the people on Earth,
Mhm.
like emotionally attached, even though they're trying to not have emotions, they felt like quite emotionally attached to them.
Mhm.
So there's quite a lot of, some of them angry, some of them quite sad because they'd listened to the discussion as well and could see, well, okay.
And they met the same spirits.
Yeah.
Because the spirits were all meeting here on Earth rather than in the sphere that Ivana was. So
I could feel that some of the first sphere spirits, though, were going to find it easier because they'd been less entrenched. They'd been doing
belief,
it less time.
So in one way it's harder because they'll have more sort of inflammatory emotions. On the other way, they'll find it a bit easier because they're not as entrenched as she was in the belief. Mm.
But there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've been influencing a lot of people on Earth.
Yeah, yeah. And that was one of the things that she's sort of impressed upon me as she was leaving, is that, like, well, a lot of people here have these beliefs that we have too.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people here, that's partly why we came. And a lot of people aren't. You guys are possibly not phrasing it in the same way as they phrased it, as she phrased it.
How many of you are involved in breath work? There you go. How effective is it going to be?
Yeah, meditative things.
How many are involved in meditation? There you go.
Group, any kind of group.
Group
work.
therapies.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, quite a few. These are all the things she
Yeah.
was doing with people on Earth and with spirits, all which lead to a dead end for lots of reasons. Yeah. But of course we like to believe they're effective when they relieve us from our feelings. So, or relieve us from the personal responsibility of feeling our feelings. And so, and also relieve us from the responsibility of dealing with our beliefs.
Yeah, and also John's saying a lot of people here believe emotion is weakness, which is the primary belief that has caused them to be very attracted to these other practices.
Yeah.
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 Can I ask one tiny follow-up on that?
Sure.
So when all of these spokespeople come to you and kind of one of them sits in channels, are a lot of the groups often shifted, or does
Yeah,
it?
usually.
Yeah, because the conversation they're aware of, they're meeting the same spirits that we've introduced to Ivana. There was a large group of spirits, almost one spirit for every person who was being helped. So it was a large group, and so it's it's very impactful for them to have such things happen, and also very impactful for them to have somebody on Earth requesting these things, who they have a lot of disrespect for. So they have a lot of disrespect for myself and Mary, but we're requesting a whole heap of things that happened that now trigger them quite a lot emotionally. And so now it's hard for them to continue in their disrespect of ourselves as well. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that happen, you know, as a result of these conversations that are helpful for their growth. Yeah. So there, and on this side, where's our mic? Yeah. If we can go, straight behind you, Jim.
Catherine, yeah.
So I am not now, but I have been involved in all those things,
Yeah.
meditation, breath work.
Yeah.
I've sort of explored a lot. I feel like I've given all that up, but what you're teaching us makes me doubt that.
Yeah.
But also, I was also very into A Course in Miracles,
Yeah.
which I feel like I've done a 180, but again,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe not completely. And because what I learned with A Course in Miracles was I had to constantly choose peace instead. You know, I had it written down and I practice it, but the emotions were still there. I
Correct.
did it a number of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that I still have. Oh, and I was raised Christian. So it's very likely I have a hodgepodge of it all, right?
Correct.
Still in me. Yeah.
Emotionally in you too.
Yeah.
And sometimes the things you imbibed as in New Age philosophy or whatever was a reaction to the Christian stuff as well.
Kind of like what we talked about with Courtney last week.
We talked to her about that, and yeah, most people have those kind of reactions to being brought up in a certain faith, finding it quite difficult, then choosing some almost opposite beliefs, and then, you know, finding them eventually not working for them, and then it's sort of like, but if you think about it, a lot of our desire to just go from one belief to another belief to another belief, we find many men in our audiences get annoyed with their wives a bit because the wives are going from one belief to another belief to another belief to another belief to another belief, and while the man's pretty much having no belief at all in that entire time. Do you know what I mean? And the main reason why the wife's going from belief, because she's still trying to avoid her feelings, right? And so, and of course the man's avoiding his feelings, but he's doing it another way, another method. In his intellect and his arrogance, he's doing it there. And quite often we see this dynamic, and when men and women together, their partners come together and come to one of our seminars, quite often the men are quite attracted to what we're saying about truths, but not very attracted to the idea they have to feel some things, right? The women are quite attracted to the idea they have to feel something, but are not looking at the importance of the false beliefs they've already imbibed through their history in terms of going from one belief to another belief to another belief to another belief. And so you end up in this sort of state where one group of people not dealing with their emotions for one reason, and another group of people not dealing with their emotions for some other reasons. And in the end, we're all going to have to address these things if we want to progress properly, obviously. But it's quite difficult at the beginning because you start realising, oh, I had the Christian belief and I had that belief and I did that for a while and I did this for a while. And can you see also there's a pattern that everything got to a point where it wasn't fulfilling anymore. And then I went on to something else. And then I did that till it wasn't fulfilling anymore. And then I went into something else. And then I went that when it wasn't fulfilling anymore. And then I went on to something else. Now, if you do that enough times, can you see there's also a danger of completely giving up in your search for truth because you feel that everything I try ends up being not fulfilling, right? So there's also that danger that many people face.
Well, and I think everybody feels that way about me in my life. They give up on me, and I feel foolish often about all of my wrong paths, but I didn't give up, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah, that's the thing, not to give up. It's very important to not give up your search for truth. Very important. It's important for your future life to continually search for truth and never believe you know all of it, ever. Because it's impossible for you to know all of it, because God's truth is infinite and you're a finite being. You're never going to know all of it, but if you have this very seeking attitude towards truth, you'll benefit, your history, your life in the future will benefit. You'll become happier more rapidly as a result of the seeking attitude. We sort of talked to one group about trying to get to the feeling of what it feels like. I think it was last week actually. The feeling of what it feels like to be a childlike investigator. To really hold on to this feeling and to hold on to it with regard not only to the external truths but also the stuff that's inside you, the emotions. Be a childlike investigator with your feelings as well. A very important process as a part of your growth. So we encourage everyone to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Oh, sorry, I'll just say this. It's interesting to do an inventory, if you like. You know how you feel a bit foolish, maybe, but do an inventory of why was I attracted to that thing and why was I attracted to that thing? Because you learn a lot about your beliefs
and the emotions you're trying to avoid.
Yeah. What did this offer me that I was attracted to? And sometimes they're what you could say positive qualities in yourself, like I wanted truth, I wanted to understand love. That's a positive inspiration. But sometimes it's they said it was going to be really easy to do this love thing, or they said it was going to be really easy to do this peace thing, and so doing the inventory of looking at why each one appealed to you can help you a lot with your belief systems.
Yes. And one thing that, this was a while ago, that really helped is I've always been reluctant to get angry. You know, my father was very angry and scared me.
Judgment about anger.
Yeah. But when I do let myself, then I recognize some of the beliefs. Like I heard myself, this was years ago, but I was like, I hate it, and go ahead and smoke me. You know, I was like, what?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, it's interesting what comes out of you, the times when you are expressing your anger is very much helping at times to guide you to a false belief that you actually have. Yeah. Most of your anger is false belief, of course, because it's all about avoiding some other deeper emotion, therefore avoiding some deeper belief. So most of it's going to lead, if you identify it and feel it, you'll unlock the underlying belief that the anger is being used to cover over. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good, isn't it? Yeah.
Hello. Yeshua Mary. Oh my goodness. I'm a little kid right now. I'm so excited. So super excited. 13 years of re-examining and exploring you guys. It's been quite amazing.
Yep.
I'm going through so many emotions right now for the past 3 hours.
Don't have to tell us your personal story.
Yeah.
It's an addiction.
Yes. The question that I have is, I've been on many paths.
Yep.
The body work, the energy work, the meditation,
Yep.
the ayahuasca ceremonies, the mushroom ceremonies.
Yeah. Drugs.
Yes.
Let's call it what it is.
Let's
It's
call it
not
what it
plant
is.
medicine,
Yeah,
it's
not plant
drugs.
medicine.
So this is what I've been doing for 13 years.
Yeah.
At least 8 years.
Yeah.
I've been implementing the divine truth teachings with these processes.
How's that worked out?
Yeah, it won't work.
I think I'm right. I think I'm doing okay.
I know you do.
I know. I think
a lot of spirits with you.
Yeah,
there's
you're
tons
not.
of spirits with me. They didn't want me to stand up. They didn't want me to ask this question.
Well, yeah, why?
Because they don't want me to know the truth.
Correct.
They want me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
I think I just got my answer there.
You did?
Yeah. I just love and appreciate you guys so much.
No,
Thank you for everything.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yes, one of the reasons why many of the spirits around you stop you from asking decent questions is because they don't want you to know the answer. And at the moment, there's a lot of influence going on in your life, and what you're trying to do is incorporate divine truth into lots of different other things, and in the hope that you're going to find the truth beyond divine truth. It really, and a fair bit of it is driven by some arrogance and feelings of wanting some superior feelings and wanting to believe that you're better than others, and that also that you're going to discover some truth beyond what Jesus is sharing with you. And at some point in the future,
And you
you're
could
going
be
to
the new Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's right. And I've had it all before, right? And so the issue.
By the way, can I just say, Jesus wouldn't mind if there was a new Jesus.
It doesn't.
Thank you.
But it does concern me if you're teaching in error.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was saying it in jest. It's not you being the next Jesus. It's you having these superior addictions met through that
process. See, most people think that because I'm saying I'm Jesus, that it means that I think I'm superior to you, and I don't. And I also don't feel, the only reason why Mary and I teach, and I have taught for 2,000 years, is because we've got closer to God than anyone else has. And in that process, we've taught many others how to get close to God, just like we have. And this is beautiful. It's beautiful because it's given them all the opportunity to experience what we've experienced. That's the only reason. It's not driven by some need for power or glory or attention or... In fact, Mary and I, if you got to know us personally, you'd find that we're quite shy. Well, not so much shy, but we're quite private people, and we like our privacy. We're not addicted to fanfare, or we're very down-to-earth people. And this is something that a majority of people don't understand, because even the media, when they come to interview us, they think, oh, we're the media, so you'd want to talk to us. And I go, why do I want to talk to you? I said, I don't need to talk to you. It's like, unless you're open to hearing some truth, then I'd love to share some with you. But there's no sort of desire to be, you know, one interviewer said to me, I've got 500,000 followers or something. How many have you got? And I said, I don't know if I got any. And he thought that his 500,000 followers meant that he was worth more than I was. And also,
I think he said that.
Yeah, he said that.
He said, well, people should be listening to me more
than you. And I said, well, to their own, you know, I just felt to their own detriment, of course. But, you know, just because a person has a lot of followers or a lot of fame or a lot of attention, a lot of approval, in fact, if anything, it usually means their condition is worse, is what my experience has been. And the problem with seeking that, is looking up to that, is that anything you search for will be distorted. And it will be distorted by groups of spirits as well as people on earth.
They'll, like you just identified, they're going to be leading you away from the very thing that's going to help you develop.
Correct.
Because they want to have superior feelings through you over others.
Yeah.
So they're going to lead you away from the very things that will...
You don't need anything more than God's truth. Nothing more. And all these other things that you attempt to try, and, you know, I understand your desire to try them. Sometimes it's driven by your own desire to be special or whatever, and other times it's driven by your own frustrations because you got emotion that you recognise and it's difficult to get rid of and things like that. I understand the motivations, but anything outside of God's truth is not going to work long term. Just not going to work long term. And the majority of people that we're sharing truth with on the earth at the moment don't believe what we're sharing is the truth. What they believe is that it's our personal opinion, or they believe that it needs to be enhanced and modified to become truth.
Make it more palatable.
To make it more palatable to the emotions, you know, in particular. Most people are avoiding their emotions quite significantly when it comes to progress. And this is why most people are still on the natural love path when it comes to their growth rather than divine love path. But I must say to you, a lot of the things you're on are not on the natural love path either. They are on the path to degradation, to hell. Like things like ayahuasca, very dangerous to your future progress. Drugs of any kind, quite dangerous to your future progress because they encourage spirit interactions without you knowing the spirits you're connecting to, and they encourage mystical experiences that are out of harmony with the truths of the universe and in harmony with the fact of spirit obsession and possession. And these are very dangerous things to get involved in.
It's like, this might be a random analogy, but I'm prone to them. You know, here in the US, I often comment to Jesus when we go to the supermarket, like, even your most basic foods are heavily drugged with sugar and corn syrup and all of this stuff. And I don't know if you've ever done it, but if you take all of that kind of highly processed food out of your diet, your taste buds resensitize to what is good. You know, fruit tastes really good and rice tastes really good. All these things taste really good and they're nourishing you at the same time. Whereas when you eat this highly processed food, it gives you a hit, it gives you a high, it's like giving you a mystical experience, and you want more and more and more of it, and meanwhile it's killing you, physically it's killing you. It's very similar with the soul and spirit interactions. You know, we meet a lot of people who have these kind of so-called mystical experiences, or they call them God experiences, and they're seeking more and more of them, but they're actually just experiences with spirits that are leading them away from their very own soul, and if you like, killing their soul. Whereas when you connect with God and you really nourish yourself, if I can use the analogy, with things like love and truth, humility, faith, taking loving action in your life, you feel yourself growing in a healthy way, and you feel your pleasure becomes resensitized to what is really good for you, and it becomes much more nourishing. Yeah.
Good. Where do you want to go next?
Mary's choice. Yeah, let's come here to Fernando, and then over here to Cecilia. Who is this?
No. Mike, close.
Yeah, we can already tell.
Ever since I was a child,
Yes.
Just put it right on your chin.
I've been seeking to have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a success I've had.
Yeah.
I think I have a long ways to go. First of all, I can't even tell whether I have a natural love spirit or a divine love spirit.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be or gain mediumistic ability, but I utterly failed in that regard, I think.
Well, no, that's not what I observed, Fernando. You actually went to sleep earlier.
Sorry?
You went to sleep earlier. I don't know if you noticed yourself.
Yeah, but that's because I did very little sleep last night.
No, it wasn't actually. You had a spirit who was who's been with you last week too, trying to make you go to sleep whenever there's something that might be important for you to listen to.
Okay.
He tries to put you to sleep.
Please tell me more about that.
Well,
I want
it's a very personal thing, and when I say very personal thing, what I mean is it's more a personal story, but let's look at some general principles, shall we? Many people who believe themselves to have a relationship with God have a relationship with a spirit claiming to be God. And we notice this a lot when we travel, where people are saying, oh, I've got a relationship with God, but they've actually got a relationship with a spirit who claims to be God. And because the spirit is in a bit better condition than the person on earth is, the loving feelings, which are often addiction feelings that they're getting from the spirit, the person on earth interprets it to be God's love for them. Right? Now, this is a state that many people are in, and this applies to yourself. You have to give up the addiction with that spirit in order to begin your relationship with God. So this spirit is with you, has been with you since childhood, and is with you for a reason. Do you know what the reason is?
I don't know. When I was young, I dabbled into yoga and meditation.
Yep. But that was
quite
in
long
your, you weren't, I'm talking about in your childhood, not when you were young in your teenager or 20s. I'm talking, go right back to like 5, 6.
Sorry, what's the question again?
The spirit. You see, he doesn't want to.
Yeah, he doesn't want you to get this question.
Yeah, he doesn't want to even get the principle. The principle here is that this spirit has claimed to be God in your life, and you wanted him in your life from a very young age, and I'm asking you why you wanted him.
I don't even know that I'm connecting to the spirit. I thought I'm
Connecting to God.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to connect to God. I don't even know whether I'm connected.
Think about the reason why you thought you wanted to connect to God when you were little. I'm talking now under teenage years, like in your early development, child, 5.
I grew up in a Catholic family.
Yes.
And all the way, I even went to seminary for 1 year.
Well, this is now later in life. I'm
We're
talking.
going back.
Let's go back further than this. You grew up in a Catholic family. That's true. Yep. In your childhood, what things happened that caused you to call on God? And I'm talking not when you're a teenager or an adult. I'm talking before then, because you called on God before then. You thought you were calling on God before then.
Well, going to school in a Catholic school, I'm always amazed with like I've learned of the lives of saints, and I thought, gee, they're connecting to God. So
Yeah.
that's what I was aspiring for. Like, I don't know, tell me now.
Well, I'm trying to get you to reason out for yourself, and there's a reason for why I'm trying to do that. What do you reckon that reason might be? You see, it's one thing for me to say, Fernando, you are not connecting to God, you're connecting to a spirit. It's another thing for you to ponder about how this connection with the spirit began and what your reasons for connecting to the spirit were.
I don't know when it began, you see. It's a goal for me to connect to God, but I don't know when it began.
For what purpose? What's your reason for connecting to God? You have a reason.
I thought that's our purpose, is to connect to God, because I acknowledge there is a God. I'm a created being, I wanted to connect to Him.
And yeah, while that's technically true, there are emotions within yourself.
There were emotions you wanted to avoid within yourself
that caused you to seek out God and not soccer or art when you were a little boy. So I think rather than answer the question now, because you know you're going to have to reflect about this. You know, what do I want out of my relationship with God? Like we were suggesting earlier, I don't know if that's when Fernando was asleep, when we were talking about what are the things that I want God to give me in this relationship. It would help you to write a list without any judgment or thinking.
that was when you were asleep.
Is it?
Yeah.
What do I want out of a relationship with God? And then examine.
What do you think God's going to give you?
Yeah.
Sometimes I wanted to connect to Him so badly that...
You were desperate, I agree.
Yeah, I always wondered what it is like to be at one with Him, reaching the 8th sphere, so
No, now your mind's involved. There were some emotions involved that you're not letting yourself have. And it's like you want to tell yourself one story, but there were some emotions driving your desire to connect to God when you were little. And you think about your family life and the difficulties associated with your family life.
When I was little, I don't remember ever connecting to God. I mean, I prayed the rosary. That's what I thought connecting to God is, because I grew up in a Catholic faith.
I feel like this might be one of these situations where your wife can answer the question. She does.
So contradict you today. But it's better to not put it in the responsibility on somebody else.
No, I'm not. It's just, I can see her going, I know what it is.
The key thing to look at, Fernando, is that there were emotional reasons, there were emotional things you thought God would give you. And when you tried to connect to God, because of those emotional reasons, the connection, the desire on your part was not sincere. That attracted a spirit who was not sincere, who implied to you that He was God. And He gave you the feelings instead of God. He thought He was doing you a favour. He's a Catholic man in the spirit world who thought, and this is how he feels as well, he thought that by convincing you that you are connecting to God when you're not, it's benefiting you, he felt.
Yeah, and he's
increasing your faith, he felt.
He feels like it's a good idea if people believe in God, God is real, and...
Mind you, he hasn't even worked out himself yet whether that's true. But
he's just living in his Catholic beliefs, but he's encouraged you throughout your life to just stay connected to this idea that you need to connect to God and that God is real.
Yeah.
But
now he's grown in love. He's not an unloving man. He's not, in the sense that he's not a nasty spirit. He's not a first sphere spirit. He's grown in love enough to care about you and your welfare, but he hasn't learnt a lot of the truth yet. Right?
Okay.
But he's prepared to give you feelings in lieu of God giving you feelings.
now this is like another...
We described this last week. Remember, you were there last week, right?
Yes.
When we did the channeling, when we talked about the dynamic with those men who we travelled with. Remember, we were coming from Carolina to here.
Yes, in the airplane.
Yes.
And the airplane, and we met these men, and there was a dynamic, a spirit dynamic. This is the exact dynamic that's happening with you. And basically the Spirit is encouraging you to believe in God by giving you feelings when you think you're connecting to God, so that you imagine that you're connecting to God. But actually it harms you because you don't then know that you're not connecting with God yet. All right?
And crucially, you're not connecting with the feelings that you were trying to avoid when you first started to
The
sort of
relationship.
have the idea about God,
Yeah.
have the interest in God.
Yeah.
But we're not going to answer it now because it's going to take too long.
Okay. Well, it's not just that, it's also you need to spend some time going back. This is the
That's what
part
I
of
mean.
self-responsibility.
Going to take
You need to
long.
spend some time going back to your childhood and working out what it is you were trying to avoid when you started wanting to connect to God. And there were certain things in your childhood you were trying to avoid.
What age?
Feelings.
At what age in my
Before the
childhood?
age of 10.
I think it's 5.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm feeling that from the Spirit with you.
Yeah.
But again, it's something that you'll need to. It's not going to. You're not going to be able to remember what was happening when I was 5 necessarily. It's a feeling thing you need to.
A faster way to do it is to
It's
feel
still
right
there.
now.
It's still
Yeah,
there.
it's still in you. The faster way to do it is to feel right now. What are you hoping? This is why I asked the question. What are you hoping God will give you in this relationship? You keep saying, I'm just going to have a relationship. And I go, no, there's things you want out of it. What is it you want out of it? It's like with almost every relationship, people enter them because they want something.
Like sometimes at the end of the day, then I would look back what has transpired during the day, and
Yeah.
I would think the things that I've done that are not loving, that I can improve on.
Yeah.
And I would pray to God to, shed some light on that.
Yeah. We're still not going back to your childhood.
Yeah.
We're now talking about you. How old are you now?
Gee, I can't remember.
Don't give me that. You know how I feel.
Connie knows, 68. Yeah.
So you're 68 years old now, right?
Yes.
Yep. And what you're doing now is describing how you think you feel now.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is not how you felt when you were 5. Right? And what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to go back to when you were 5, and you're very resistant to doing it. Very resistant.
And also you.
For what I can see,
I don't think I had any belief systems when I was 5.
No, but
You had some
you had
feelings.
some beliefs about avoiding feelings.
about wanting to get
That would be
away
good to
from
avoid
certain
some
feelings. And you were hopeful that God would help you get away from them.
And the
Oh,
keys.
that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But it's necessary.
It's mainly a challenge because you're used to thinking in your
With
head
mind, yeah.
Yeah.
about this
Yeah.
relationship with God.
Yeah.
As soon as you start to connect in your feelings about your desire for God, it will be very easy actually, because it's the same feeling now in you as when you were 5.
Well, I could remember I wanted to avoid bedwetting.
Right? So shame, avoid shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to this day, like when I sleep,
Yeah.
I practically wake up 8 to 10 times a day and go to the bathroom just so I don't wet the bed.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I can remember I was
Okay,
avoiding.
so that's
but-
one thing.
Yeah.
And you're getting closer now, but
Yeah.
there's shame associated with in your childhood that you wanted to avoid.
And also some fears.
But can you see, even just us being persistent with you has caused you to contemplate more deeply? Yeah, at the beginning of this conversation, you were just saying, no, it's all right, it's all right. And now I'm going, no, oh yes, so there was something in your childhood. So, and there's some fears in your childhood, obviously. Bedwetting is caused by a person not wanting to come back to their physical body when they're a spirit. So every night you go to sleep, you are in your spirit body. You're in a sleep state, and when the body is calling you to go to the toilet,
I would find a toilet in the spirit world.
you would like to, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, anyone
But it
who's
doesn't
went to
help the
bed, that's
physical
what you
body,
do.
right? Yeah. So what the average child will do under those, if they're afraid to come back to their body, and there's all sorts of reasons why they are afraid to come back to their body, and this is something you haven't contemplated, is there was all sorts of fears that you had as a child. and that cause you to be afraid to come back to your body. And as a result, you end up wetting the bed, right? And then you get ashamed of wetting the bed. But actually there's fears that cause you to not want to come back to your body. And you still have a lot of those fears right to this day.
Okay. There was an incident, I don't know how young I was,
Yeah.
wherein I get some money from my mom's purse, and I was spunked by it.
Yeah.
Is that what when I was a child?
Well, that's one event, but it's not the event that caused you to not come back to your body. We will stop.
We're going to stop because we'll be here all afternoon.
I don't want to give you the answer, because if I give you the answer, you won't investigate, and I need you to investigate for yourself.
And it's a part of your development. This is a part of you coming to understand. This is how you're going to grow, is by having the question. You're very worried about the question. You just want to get an answer.
Yeah.
But you need to sit with the question and let it work on you.
Yep.
Become sensitive.
Yep.
Yeah.
G'day. We have someone over here we were at already. Yes.
When I was 13 years old, I believe I was introduced to Jesus. By
You were
Introduced to
Jesus
introduced to me.
Yeah, you need to speak up. They will put the mic closer.
Yeah.
by some Catholic musicians group that I was part of.
Yep.
And it was just my older brother trying to teach me about love and how to be, how to have a relationship with God. When I learned about Jesus this way, different than the teachings, the formal teachings of the Catholic Church,
Yep.
I believe this really it was Jesus.
Yep.
And,
Which it wasn't, but go on.
Sorry, was it a spirit experience, or are you just talking about ideas about Jesus?
It was a Catholic group that they
It was a
write music
spirit experience.
about Jesus. Like Jesus is a brother that was humble. He was in God. He
Okay.
was trying to teach us about love.
Yeah.
And I believe, oh, that's my older brother. That's
Mhm.
not God. No sacrifice. No, angry punishment of God and stuff like that. So I believe that was Jesus. And I thought if I had been in the first century, I would have followed his teachings and go with him
Yep.
and learn about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
can we
not
explain
true.
what happened?
Or is there a question?
Yes, so one is the belief I had back then. Then my life went like I was angry with authority and everything about false beliefs, illogical teachings
Yep.
to me that my parents had, religions, politics, everything is illogical to me. So I'm not gonna follow anybody. I'm gonna rebel and do my thing.
Yeah.
The only thing that I loved was science, because at least there is some proof of that in my life. But I always had this gratefulness.
Can we get
Still
to the
no
question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. My
Story.
belief now-
Stories.
Can I
Simon
just say
story.
to all of you, honestly, you are so addicted to your own stories.
Yeah.
No?
I was, yeah. Sorry. I was
Yeah.
trying to determine the belief I had in the past that I wanted to follow Jesus in the first century, and the belief I have now that I also want to learn about the truth, God's truth.
Still no question.
Yeah. No
Is
question.
this what are my belief that are maybe blind spots or false beliefs that I do believe that I want to learn?
Still
and
no
teach,
question.
But is that false belief, or how do I determine if it's a sincere belief that I want to do this, or is insincere or addiction based?
Right. So what actually happened when you were in those teenage years?
It was just a set of beliefs, I think she's saying, that she was introduced to.
No. There was also a spirit who came to you, right, and convinced you that those beliefs were true, which they are, and they also convinced you that you would be a follower in the first century. No, the spirit was saying they were one of the followers in the first century, coming to share with you. They were trying to tell you about themselves, and you assumed that meant it was all about you. And this is a problem that many people on earth have, is that when spirits come to you, trying to share their personal experience with you, many of you think that's about me in my past, like I would have done that, or I would have thought that, or in many cases you even get to think, oh, that was my past life that I had as that person. When the Spirit is just trying to come and share with you their experience in their life. Now, in terms of how it affected you, it didn't affect you, because you still had the beliefs of your childhood that you were rebelling about. So it didn't actually change your emotional beliefs. What it actually did was you changed your intellect, your intellectual system changed, but your feelings were still Catholic in terms of the feelings coming in, that are still there, by the way. From an emotional perspective, you're still Catholic, right? You still hold on to some of these beliefs. And what you're doing is you're looking for some kind of experience that causes you to become like a follower of the truth without it having to be something that you personally have to choose to do for yourself. That you have to put some effort into, using your will to put some effort into. And this is one reason why you got so angry in the rebellion stage. Angry with authority, right? Because you get presented with an intellectual concept which is against the beliefs. You still don't want to feel the beliefs and how they were, go through the feelings of the beliefs. So you'd rather replace them, but the feelings are still there. So how do you suppress them? Well, how you suppress most feelings is by getting angry about them. That's a very effective way of suppressing some feelings. And that's why you got angry. But with all that being said, can you see it's still about you. You want to be special. You want to be unique. And many of you feel this way. You want to be special. You want to be unique. You want to have a special experience. But God loves you as much as God loves me. We are not special in the sense that we are more important than one another. I'm not more important than you, and you're not more important than me. God's not going to treat you any more special than he treats me. Right? And it's very important to understand that. So with that addiction, you're going to attract spirits who want to treat you as if you're special. And then you're going to do what they say rather than what God would indicate to do with the conscience. That's what you'll end up doing. And that's why during the later years you became rebellious towards authority rather than more accepting of authority, God's authority.
Do you believe my desire now to learn about the truth, God's truth, and my desire to maybe eventually help in this path, in the things?
Can you see where you went there? There's your own desire for God and God's truth. That's yours. Then you went, I now need to feel special that I'm going to help somebody on the path. Now you're going into special stage. See, and while you have that special feeling, you're not actually going to have a relationship with God either. Right? So my suggestion is you've got to deal with this feeling special thing that's trying to go on with all of these feelings. And you've got to deal with it in such a way that you realise that you're just the same as anybody else, but your desire can be leading you down a track. God is not predetermining to you that you're going to learn about God and then do some things. That's not how it works. If you learn the truth, your desire will build, and that desire may lead you to do things. But it's not God predetermining your desire. That's your responsibility to exercise your desire. So don't feel that like God is like going to give you some special role that will make you feel like you're special. You're far better off under those circumstances feeling like you're not special and having a cry about it than you are feeling the other feeling, because the other feeling is going to lead you down a track of potential spirit overcloaking, arrogance, and a number of other things that will end up being bad for you. Right? So in answer to your question, well, if you exercise a desire that's passionate to have a relationship with God, you will eventually have one. But it won't be predetermined by God. It'll be determined by your desire.
Yeah.
I thought I had a desire to at least learn from you guys the truth.
I think you do, but your motive for that desire is eventually to feel special. And that's something you need to address. That makes sense?
Yes. I also feel there's like, if I can even learn myself, how can I even help others? And I feel like
That's true.
I'm almost hopeless sometimes because I don't know my blind spots. And maybe that's one of the reasons I wanted to ask. So it seems like one of my blind spots is this desire to be special.
Yeah.
And any other truth about my
Cecilia, I think
desires?
yeah, I think that
Now we're getting very selfish.
you've
Are we?
entered selfishness now.
Now you're in selfishness. And this is what we find when we answer these personal questions in a group. Many of you are not thinking about other people in the group. You're just wanting an answer for you. And if you think earlier, Fernando, you were in the same place, wanting an answer for you. And every person wanting an answer for themselves. And the problem is, if you apply the principles, you already have your answers for yourselves. But you also need to learn how to provide a principle and live by a principle without somebody else teaching you or telling you how to do it. You need to come to terms with that for yourself. You need to desire to learn that for yourself. And this is a problem we find with groups where a lot of people are more attracted to a smaller group because they want to ask personal questions. We don't want to answer them. And the reason why we don't want to answer them is because we're now not talking about principles. And the principles will save all of your life, not just one person's life, but everybody's. But as soon as we focus on an individual thing, well, your individual life is very much about you and very much about your experience and your passions and your desires, all of which are personal. And they're not the same as other people's experience. So Fernando's experience, I can feel the childhood, very different to your experience, childhood. And you're two individuals in that regard. You can apply the same principles to both situations and end up with fixing both things. But if I just speak to Fernando about no principles and just about his personal life, and then I speak to you about your personal life and your experiences, we're not discussing the principles anymore. And it's the principles that are going to help everybody in the room, not just you.
I apologize.
Yep, that's good. It's just a good thing to teach. Yep, yep.
What if we come over here and who's got just behind you, Jordan? If you go just behind you.
Hello. Okay, so earlier where you had the belief thing, the beliefs on the board where
Yep.
you need to process out your beliefs.
Yep.
Right. See, like I find a catch-22 with God. Like this is how I feel.
Yep.
Right. So, not happy with God.
Yeah, angry with God. Yep.
Yeah, angry with God. I feel like God, never gave me what I wanted. Basically, God never fulfilled my addictions. Right.
Yeah.
So angry with God about that. God's my dad,
So
angry at my dad
as well.
Angry at my dad. Yeah, lots of issues with God.
Yeah.
I also I feel really crappy about myself. I have really low self-worth, right? And I want it, and
I don't know if I'd agree, but go on.
I don't know, maybe I can play like I don't, but I have a lot of that self-doubt, a lot of that addiction stuff too.
Yeah, that's addiction, that's not self-worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so say if I wanted to, talk to God about like, hey God, how do you, like I feel this way about me, like I feel, ashamed about certain things I've done.
No, you don't.
Okay, this is somewhat personal.
What's the question? Yeah, what's the question?
I was just curious if you have this anger with God and you need to pray about like, hey God, tell me how I'm supposed to feel about myself, like how you see me, what worth I have to you, and you're angry with God. How do you like?
But stop for a moment. You're saying to God, tell me how I'm supposed to feel. What does that sound like to you?
That I don't know how I.
And what does God want you to know about yourself? He wants you to know how you feel. He wants you to know how you feel, not how you're supposed to feel. He wants you to know how you actually feel about yourself.
But like the good things. I mean, like the good things about
No,
it.
see, this is the problem. You don't want to feel all the things. You want just the good things.
Okay.
Not everything.
I can.
Like, you don't want to see the warts. You only want to see the nice smooth skin.
Yeah, I understand.
You don't want to see everything. You just want to see the bits you want to see. Now, God can't answer insincere prayers like that. They're insincere. So there's not going to be an answer. Have you had an answer?
No.
No. That's why. Because it's insincere. We need to learn how to be honest with God first. So honest, it'd be more honest for you to go, I'm just bloody angry with you, God.
I feel like I've tried that before. I mean, I reach a certain point of.
But you're not examining why you're so angry. You're just living in your anger about it.
Okay.
Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in other words, you want to be angry, you want to stay righteously angry with God. Why? What does that give you? What kind of things does that give you emotionally?
I don't know. It keeps me.
It's like you want to believe you have no worth, when I don't feel that from you. So what does that give you?
An excuse to not grow, an excuse to have excuse to feel bad almost.
Yes, it does give you that. Yep. So what does being angry with God give you?
An excuse to not have a relationship with God.
Correct. But what does that give you? See, if you don't want to have a relationship with God, that's one thing, isn't it? But on one hand, you're getting told you should have a relationship with God. You're hearing divine truth, and you're being told good relationship with God is good.
I grow Catholic. I know there's a God. It'd be good.
To have a relationship
to do. You know.
Yeah, it would be good. But the internal feeling is no, it's not good to have a relationship with God. But what do you want from God? You like you said earlier, you wanted God to meet your addictions, and you wanted God to, and the reason why you're angry with God is because God
it doesn't do it. Yeah,
doesn't do it.
Yeah, like 100% doesn't. Even now, when I'm like frustrated or something, and I feel like just an insincere addiction thing going like, God help me out here, and I'm just like, nah, it ain't gonna happen. Like, I know what that was. So
that's right.
It's like, naughty
God, you haven't given me.
But then from there it goes out like, is any spirit gonna help me out? Like, I'll go to like wherever.
And there will be spirits who come along.
Yeah, I know. And some mean well and some do not.
Well, most under those circumstances will not.
Yeah, well, it's for some not. It's just for stupid things, like I want to be able to play the trumpet better, or play golf better, or something like that. Like
but even that is they won't be helping you.
Any loving spirit won't help you with that.
Yeah.
No. So this is why I keep asking, what do you want from God? It's sort of like similar question to Fernando. What do you want from God? Like many of you want God to help you avoid a whole heap of things.
Okay.
God's not going to do that.
Yeah, save me.
Save you. And he's not going to do that either. Your sin is your sin. God wants you to face it, to become aware of it, to deal with it. He doesn't want to save you from it, or he wants you to save you from it, but only by becoming aware of it and dealing with it. He doesn't want to magically save you from it. Do some magical hocus pocus and bang, you're free of it. That's not what God wants. Because if God did that, you would not know what caused your sin. You wouldn't know what you've done in your sin. You wouldn't know anything about it. You'd be uninformed. And you'd be more likely to actually do it again.
And that's why you don't like, so it goes back to why you don't like answering. Say somebody asks you a question and they want an answer straight right from you, you'd rather them figure it out themselves.
Well, I want to teach them how to figure it out themselves. And God wants you to know how to figure it out yourself, with God's help, of course. But God wants you to do that, because then you're going to learn a lot of things in that process. And see, most of us don't want to learn things. We just want to go, I've got problems right now, fix it now, just tell me what I do and I'll do it.
Yeah, I don't want to learn things about myself. I like learning information, but I don't want to learn anything.
Correctly. And also you don't want to learn information that's going to help you learn things about yourself.
Yeah.
But also you don't want to learn information that says, no, you're a sinner and this is the ways you sin. You don't want to learn that either. So you say you want to learn external, but only a portion of the external,
Yeah.
which is not related to you.
Yes.
And the problem is, Bliss is related to you, so all of the things that are related to you are going to have to be addressed in order for you to get bliss. And most people on earth sort of believe that, God's going to do this magical, he's going to have some kind of arm that goes, wave that away.
You're all good, Steve.
You're done. And like a lot of these,
It's very good.
a lot of these religious people do now. They're like,
Enlightened.
you're now enlightened and free. None of this is real. None of it works. And there's good reason why, because God wants to helps us to learn everything about what we do, including learn everything about our sin. The more we learn about it, the more informed we become, the more of God's laws we'll know, the more love we will develop in terms of trying to overcome these things, and this will be very good for us. It'll cause us to have a good use of our will, a powerful use of our will while we're on earth. And so God wants you to go through this process of learning. But the more entitled the society is on earth, and most Western societies are heavily entitled, what we expect is that there's some magical solution that someone's going to just come along and rescue us from our problems that we created.
Yeah.
We want to be...
Like I want my parents to do constantly.
Yes, we want to be rescued or saved. And this is why many people have been very prone in your country, and still are prone in your country, to believe that Jesus saves. Because the more entitled the society, the more entitled they feel that God will come along and save them from whatever their problems are. But the sin that we have is ours. We created it. We manufactured it. God didn't have anything to do with it, and He expects us to deal with our own creations. That's what a self-responsible person does, deals with their own creations. And God deals with His, you deal with yours, is that way God feels. So if we want assistance from God to deal with our creations that are sins or even desires, God will help us.
Okay.
But He's going to make sure that we actually have that self-responsible feeling first.
That was kind of my question. So,
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that.
So we need to develop a high degree of self-responsibility.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is something that in an entitled society we generally don't want to do.
And the progress you've made in your relationship so far, because you just described some,
Yep.
is that you are aware that you have demands on God. You are aware because you got angry with God and you're like, and now you're not doing it, now I want someone else to do it. That is progress in your relationship with God,
Yeah.
because that entitlement that Jesus is talking about, that's your
You're
expression.
aware that you have it.
You're more aware.
The average
than
person has
someone
no
else.
idea they have it.
Yep.
Right? So that's a progress.
Yeah.
That's
You're
progress.
being special.
But it's
Magic.
good. It's good that you are now aware that God's not going to treat you in any special manner. He's not going to break His laws for you. He's not going to compromise for you. He's not going to make your life magically better.
Yeah.
God's giving you answers, and the answers are, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So I made the comment not to make you feel special, but to help
Yeah, I know.
you
I was
see.
it made me feel special. That's why I made like a joke out of it. Because I know I'm not special. You had like 3 conversations with people wanting to be special. And I was like, no, I'm
You might go
special.
again. That's right.
But and you're not more special than anyone
No,
else.
yeah,
who's
I
spoken to. But a lot of people feel like, well, I'm not getting an answer from God, I'll give up. But actually, if they're not seeing how God is beginning the education process, even when you engage in a very honest manner, even if that honesty is rage, if you are open, you start to be educated by God. And
Because
a
you
lot of
start
people don't
realizing
see
He's
that.
not going to answer my rage. He's
Yeah,
not going
that
to respond
doesn't
to my
work.
rage.
Oh, actually, no, I can tell I got a lot of demands, and here they are. All of those things are blocks in your relationship with God, and that's a part of your education.
And also you start seeing, I can get angry with my mother and father and they'll do some things for me, maybe. or I get angry with my partner and she'll do some things for me, but if I get angry with God, he's not. So God's already educating you what love really is compared to what is happening.
And this is why we're saying to Fernando, like, we don't want to tell you what the exact thing is, because then you wouldn't seek this with God. You wouldn't seek the answers. You just seek them from us and then go, oh, okay, we've got to look at that before I start with God. But that's actually not going to help anyone connect with God.
When you were saying that your sins are yours, how does that apply to like an 11-year-old kid? Like I tried to kill myself when I was 11, and I don't remember. I don't know if it was me or like I learned a whole bunch about spirit influence. I don't know if I was
you
like
were a spirit influence for sure. Yeah.
But there was a reason you were
to
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't remember like why. I know that you've said before that, you know, that's self-hatred to the max, basically.
No, it's anger to the max.
It's self-anger to the max. Just anger or
not
self-anger?
Not yourself, no.
At everyone else.
At everyone else.
Yeah.
The person who suicides is angry with everyone else.
Well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
And a person who suicides wants everybody else to know.
That they're not helping take away your
My
feelings,
pain.
your pain.
So, and so that desire to have, you know, to get out of your pain was a sin of your own.
To escape, yeah. So that was, okay.
Yeah, now.
That's what I felt.
God attributes it to partly to you because of your desire has been developed, but also partly to the people who taught you to have that desire.
But it doesn't really matter who else God attributed it to, because it's in you, it's got to come out. It's just the way. It's not like, when we talk about sin, it is literally where you've missed the mark of love and that belief system is residing inside of you. Yeah. It's not from a place of judgment or worth, or it's just, here's my sin, what am I going to do with it, you know? Yeah. So whether it entered you when you're 2 or 22 or 202, it's still...
Or 2002, there were, you know, like the spirit we just spoke to, 3,000 years old, still committing sin.
Yeah. And the key thing is releasing it from you.
And just wanting to see my own sin.
Yeah. And also, not just for your own sake, but also for the sake of others, because every sin you commit doesn't just harm you, but it harms everyone around you as well. And also bear in mind that these things exist as feelings and beliefs inside of myself. So unless I come to terms with them, nobody's else going to have to come to terms with them other than I. I must come to terms with them. Me, I'm the person that must take the action to come to terms with my own sin. Right? Now, I know that belief is challenging, and compared to some spirit coming along and tell you it's all magical, you can just take ayahuasca or something and have a big emotional experience and everything will be cleared from you, then many people will be attracted to that experience rather than the real thing that we're talking to you about. But it's not real. As they eventually work out, it's not real. And what we're trying to suggest to you is like, this is the simplest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do. It's, you know, you just heard from a spirit who spent 3,000 years doing something else. Right? That's hard, to do the wrong thing for thousands of years and then be told 3,000 years down the track it's down the wrong direction. That's tough.
She was very proud of her progress, though.
She was, yeah. But now, not so much happy about it, not happy about it. And all I was trying to do is to encourage her to not engross herself in her own morass of bad feelings now, but rather just deal with the problems, right? And that's the thing to bear in mind. If you take a wrong road here on earth, if that wrong road remains with you to the end of your life on earth, then it's likely going to continue in your spirit life for quite some time to come. And in the end, when you do overcome that wrong road, you'll regret that you spent so much time in pain and suffering rather than just a short time in pain and suffering. God's way is the most economical way to deal with your pain. God's way. Every other way that humans come up with are the least economical ways to deal with your pain. And when I say economical, I mean if you follow God's way, it'll be the shortest amount of time and it will be over. If you follow any other way, it'll be a longer time than that. And oftentimes not just a longer time, but like tens, hundreds of times longer than that. Hundreds of times longer before you reach a state where you're actually happy. You know? Now, you're in a state of rebellion at the moment. Right? This is a good place because it's better than denial.
Yep.
You understand what I mean by that? It's better than you being in complete denial going, nothing's wrong with me.
It's all good. I've got a relationship with God.
Yeah, so it's better than that. But staying in anger, you can stay there a long time.
I've been there for
Long time.
since I saw you.
Yeah.
Like 15 years. So yeah.
You can stay there for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I've known spirits who stayed there for more than 2,000 years. Mary's own mum and dad in the first century had been in that state for 2,000 years. Right? So you can stay in a state of anger if that's what you want to do, but it's to your own detriment. Right? And this is something that at some point in time, all of us need to come to terms with. That quite often we choose to do things that are to our own detriment, only to find that it was all a waste of time. Not only a waste of time, but it's actually caused ourselves and others more pain and suffering than it needed to. And when I say needed to, if you do God's way, it'll be the shortest pain and suffering for you and everyone around you. Right? Anything more is unneeded. It's like, why would you want to do anything more than that, the shortest amount of time? But see, on earth, to us, like having to feel pain for like 5 years, most people on earth would feel that's unbearable. Having to feel pain for 15 minutes, most people on earth in entitled countries feel is unbearable.
Yeah, some people think I must be in the second sphere now because I sobbed for 3 hours.
I just had a cry for 15 minutes, you know, isn't it wonderful? I worked through that.
It was very painful.
That
It's
kind of
how people feel. You know, that's because there's no tolerance for development. It's actually development. Like what you're describing is development. Going to God with your rage, being honest, that's better than most people who are just completely in denial of the fact that they have any expectation of God.
Most people who come from a New Age background and any other religious background generally are in what I'd call La La Land. Is that LA land or? Or is that? But it's like, well, I think that's what the movie was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
La La Land? Like,
Just a make-believe, like kind of.
Make believe. It's make believe, and
Most people's facades won't even let them acknowledge that they've got expectations or anger with God, and yet most people do. And until they're willing to acknowledge that, they can't actually get any further than complete disconnection from God.
Yeah, I was just worried that, you know, like that, why I said it was a catch-22, because like I have these things, but I also desire help. So it's like, what do you do?
well, you're gonna have to be more sincere with how you desire that help.
Yeah,
See, at the moment, you desire help to get rescued.
yeah,
Now, it's one thing to desire help so that you deal with things, isn't it, and go through things. It's another thing to desire help just so that you can get rescued.
yeah.
So you're going to have to be more sincere about how you desire help.
Okay.
Make sense?
The
Yeah.
thing driving the rage is the desire to be rescued.
That's
So
right.
deal with that, and
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. It's a desire to have someone come to your rescue.
To
Some
take it all
magical
away.
solution.
Yeah,
Take it all away.
I liked your.
Free of it, you know. Yeah.
It's good with your nice pastel-colored shirt. It was
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Jesus is going to come and rescue you,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Always, I
in
love
his
those
petite
shirts.
tunic.
Yeah.
Not the case. You know, I've never been rescued by God in my entire life. I've been helped by God to go through my own experience.
Yeah.
Yep, but not rescued.
Thank you.
Yeah. God wants me to go through the experience, to learn the experience, and understand myself well, understand other people well, understand emotions well, get an expanded view of emotions. See, while I've got locked up in me all these hard emotions, I've got a very harsh view of emotion. I've got a very hard, constrained, controlled view of all the stuff that's inside of me. And while I have a controlled view of me, I'm also going to have a controlled view of Mary and you and anybody else as well. I'm going to always be trying to control people to prevent myself from feeling things. And I need to learn all that. I need to learn the disadvantages of trying to staying in a state of rage. I need to learn what that feels like, and you're learning what it feels like. It's frustrating. And you said you've been in it for what, nearly 15 years? Yeah. When are you going to give it up? It's a good question, isn't it? Like I said, I've known people not give it up for hundreds of years. So you've got to be real careful that you're not addicted to the anger, addicted to the rage, addicted to the blame, addicted to the self-doubt, like we were talking earlier, addicted to the judgment, addicted to the idea that you're not worth anything, you know, because they're all about trying to stay away from feelings, all these addictions. Yeah, and there'll be plenty of spirits come along who try to help you out of them. Like these group of spirits we just helped, they were helping people just like you, some of them even you. They were helping to stay away from your feelings because they believed the whole idea of you getting in your feelings, that's bad. That's bad. There's no peace in that. There's no peace and quiet in that. There's no internal feeling of calm in that. So they taught and are teaching and have been teaching for a long time, 3,000 years, that that's the way forward. Now, you can stay in states like that for a long time if you want to. And what we're recommending is you don't do that. And sometimes the reason why we involve spirits in these conversations is to show you that people stay in these feelings for a long time, trying to get out of their real, like, honest emotion, trying to get out of those. You don't do that to yourself. It's not a love of self to do that. Many of you believe avoiding your emotions is loving yourself. It's not. It's detuning, denying, and eventually numbing yourself completely to life is what it's doing. And when you're in a state of numb, somehow you're going to have to get out of the numb. The numb place is like a prison. And there's bars you put up to create numb. The numb place. To get out of it is going to require some effort. You're going to have to break down these bars. They're yours. They're your beliefs. You break down the bars, you'll be freed from those beliefs, and therefore freed from the numb state, from the detuned state. You know, don't you, that the more and more that you have to meet an addiction, the more numb you come to the results of the addiction. Everybody generally knows that. The more they try, like the more alcohol you drink, if you're an alcoholic, the more alcohol you need to drink to have any effect. Now, I must mention my grandfather with a group. He drank one flagon, which is nearly 5 litres, which is 1 and a bit of your gallons, of port every single day. That's how much alcohol he needed to get the kick from the addiction. Now, he started off just drinking a few beers, but he ended up, by the time he passed, we went to clean up his house. There was an entire backyard in Australia. We have backyards that are probably a bit smaller than many of your ones in the suburbs, but it was a 1,000 square metre backyard, and the entire back fence was flagons from ground to this high. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, a record of his many hundreds of days. Like I'm talking, there were 5,000 flagons. Right? He used to, and that wasn't all of them. He used to get people. He used to stack the back fence up with them, and then get people to come and remove them for him. Imagine, he needed more and more and more to satisfy the addiction. And this is the trouble with addiction: is you're going to need more and more and more to satisfy it. That's not what it's like when you follow God's way. When you follow God's way, you become sensitive to everything. You can become sensitive to your addictions, but you also become sensitive to everything. Tastes, all your sensory apparatus of your body is more sensitive. Your sense of smell, taste, everything's more sensitive. Your feelings are more sensitive. Everything's more sensitive. So it takes a lot less to make you happy. as well.
There's more pleasure.
There's more pleasure because you just pleasure by, you just have pleasure from looking at things sometimes, you know.
Mangoes.
So I'd encourage each of you to do that. Yeah. What's the time?
It's 4.
4. All right, well, we're not going to get to talk with our second group, but we might do that tomorrow in the morning. Get to talk to that second group because it'll be interesting as well.
And sorry we didn't get to all your questions, but keep them principled. Keep the questions principled and we get through them.
We'll get through more. Move through more questions. All right, guys. Challenging day for many of you, yes? Yeah. And too bad.
That's good. We're like, yes, that's good.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we're trying to, this particular weekend and the next one, is to involve some spirits in this discussion, is because we find there's many spirits around that we'd also like to help besides yourselves. And also in the process, you get to learn things about yourself when we have those interactions. So that's the reason why we'd like to continue that. Okay, so good luck tonight, getting all suppressed and shut down for those spirits. Come along tomorrow, all suppressed and shut down like you did today. No, I'm not recommending that. Open yourself up to what's around you and let yourself feel the influences upon you. Each day you do that, you'll find the next day will be better when you're here. Right?
Yeah.
If you close down and get all influenced, you'll find each day becomes worse as well.
If you feel pressured, then feel pressure, rather than close down. A lot of us feel pressured by spirits, and then we either do what the spirits want or we just shut ourselves off to try to cope with the feeling, try to manage the feeling, let's say. You can just cry about feeling bossed around or feeling suppressed, It seems magic because it works so well, but it's actually a really logical thing to do.
Yeah. So we'd like to encourage you to do that. Tomorrow we'll begin again at 11. We will probably only be here from about 10 tomorrow. We were here a lot earlier today because we had this set up, but we're going to leave everything set up today. So we'll be here about 10 in the morning. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. And some people have asked questions about donations. There's a donation box up the back. Some have asked questions about cheques. We can't receive cheques. Our banks in Australia won't cash them.
So they're international.
Because they're international. So if you want to donate, there's a box up the back. We also have donate.divinetruth.com.
I'll just put that up here until tomorrow morning.
If you want to do it online.
And there's various methods.
And on there you'll find credit card, transfer wires, bank transfers from the bank accounts. We've got US bank account, things like that. Have a look on there and it shows how to do that.
Thank you for your
donations. Guys. Thank you for your donations too. Thanks, guys.